Sarah Martinez had always felt more comfortable underwater than on land. At 28, she was one of the most respected marine biologists in the Pacific Research Institute. Her colleagues often joked that she had gills instead of lungs, given how much time she spent beneath the waves studying shark behavior around the Farallon Islands off the California coast. The morning of September 15th started like any other research day. Sarah woke before dawn in her small cabin aboard the research vessel Ocean's Edge. She could hear the gentle lapping of waves against the hull and the distant calls of seabirds preparing for their daily hunt. The weather forecast promised perfect diving conditions, calm seas, clear skies, and excellent underwater visibility. Sarah's research focused on the feeding patterns of great white sharks during their seasonal migration. These apex predators fascinated her not just for their power and grace, but for their crucial role in maintaining ocean ecosystem balance. She had spent 3 years documenting their behavior, and today's dive would add to her growing database of observations. After a quick breakfast of coffee and toast, Sarah began preparing her equipment. She methodically checked her diving gear: oxygen tanks, regulator buoyancy control device, wetsuit, fins, and mask. Each piece of equipment was inspected twice. In her line of work, a single equipment failure could mean the difference between life and death. Her diving partner for the day was Marcus Chen, a 25-year-old graduate student who had joined the research team 6 months earlier. Marcus was eager and intelligent, but still learning the ropes of deep-water shark research. Sarah took her mentoring responsibilities seriously, always emphasizing safety protocols and respect for the marine environment. "Remember, we're observers today," Sarah told Marcus as they suited up. "We maintain safe distance, document behavior, and avoid any actions that might provoke or stress the sharks. These waters have been particularly active this week. Sonar readings show at least 12 great whites in the area." Marcus nodded, adjusting his diving mask. "The water temperature readings show it's dropped 2 degrees since yesterday. Think that's bringing in more prey fish?" "Exactly," Sarah replied, pleased with his observation. "Cooler water often means better hunting conditions. The sharks follow the food chain. We might see some interesting feeding behaviors today." Captain Rodriguez, a weathered 50-year-old who had been working these waters for over 2 decades, approached them as they made final preparations. His expression was more serious than usual. "Sarah, I've been monitoring marine radio traffic this morning," he said, lowering his voice. "There have been 3 shark encounters reported in the past week. Nothing fatal, but closer to shore than normal. The sharks seem more aggressive than usual this season." Sarah appreciated the captain's concern, but she had been diving with sharks for years without incident. "We'll be extra cautious, Captain. Standard protocols, safe distances, and constant communication." The dive site was located 30 miles northwest of the Farallones, where the continental shelf drops dramatically into deep Pacific waters. This underwater cliff, known as the Monterey Canyon, created unique currents that attracted diverse marine life. It was also a favorite hunting ground for great white sharks. As the boat approached the dive coordinates, Sarah could see the water changing color from the lighter blue of shallow seas to the deep indigo that indicated significant depth. Seabirds circled overhead, a good sign that bait fish were active below the surface. "Depth sounder shows we're over the canyon edge," Captain Rodriguez called out. 200 feet to the shelf, then it drops to over 3,000 feet. Current is running northeast at about 2 knots. Sarah and Marcus performed their final equipment checks and reviewed their dive plan. They would descend to 60 feet, spend 45 minutes documenting any shark activity, then return to the surface with plenty of air remaining. It was a conservative plan, designed to maximize safety while gathering valuable research data. The water was incredibly clear as they descended. Sarah felt the familiar sense of peace that came with entering the underwater world. Schools of blue rockfish swirled around them like living clouds. Sea lions played in the distance, their graceful movements a stark contrast to their clumsy behavior on land. At 40 feet, Sarah spotted their first shark of the day, a juvenile great white, perhaps 8 feet long, cruised slowly along the canyon wall. She signaled to Marcus, who immediately began filming with the waterproof camera. The young shark showed no interest in the divers, continuing its patrol with the unhurried confidence of an apex predator. They spent 20 minutes following the juvenile at a respectful distance, documenting its behavior patterns. Sarah noticed it seemed to be hunting methodically, using the canyon wall to ambush potential prey. This was exactly the type of behavior she hoped to capture for her research. As they prepared to ascend slightly to explore a different section of the canyon, Sarah noticed something that made her blood run cold. Rising from the deep blue depths below them was a massive shadow. At first, she thought it might be a large piece of kelp or debris, but as it came closer, the unmistakable shape became clear. It was the largest great white shark Sarah had ever seen. The massive female, easily 20 feet long and weighing several tons, moved with surprising grace through the water. Her scarred hide told stories of decades in the ocean, and her size indicated she was likely 40 years old or more. Sarah immediately signaled to Marcus to stop moving and remain perfectly still. The giant shark hadn't noticed them yet, but she was rising steadily from the depths, following some instinct or scent that had caught her attention. As the massive predator drew closer, Sarah could see the incredible detail of her anatomy. The shark's eyes were like black pearls, constantly moving and assessing everything in her environment. Her gill slits fluttered rhythmically, processing thousands of gallons of water with each breath. Most intimidating of all was her mouth, partially open to reveal rows of razor-sharp teeth, each one capable of cutting through bone and muscle with devastating efficiency. Sarah had encountered large great whites before, but nothing of this magnitude. This was clearly the apex predator of the region, a shark that had survived decades of challenges to become the undisputed ruler of these waters. The massive shark continued rising, now only 50 feet below them. Sarah realized they were directly in her path to the surface. Moving too quickly could trigger the shark's predatory instincts, but staying motionless might put them in even greater danger as the giant approached. Marcus, despite his relative inexperience, remained calm and still. Sarah was proud of how he handled the situation, following her lead without panic or sudden movements that could prove fatal. The giant shark was now 30 feet below them and still rising. Sarah could see every detail of her powerful body, the massive pectoral fins that could deliver devastating strikes, the muscular tail that could propel her through the water at incredible speeds, and most unnervingly, those ancient eyes that seemed to be evaluating everything in their path. At 20 feet below them, the shark suddenly stopped rising. She hung motionless in the water, as if considering her next move. Sarah held her breath, knowing that any movement could trigger an attack response from the massive predator. For what seemed like an eternity but was probably only 30 seconds, the three apex predators of their respective environments remained frozen in an underwater standoff. The great white shark, perfectly adapted for her oceanic domain. Sarah and Marcus, visitors in a world where they were no longer at the top of the food chain. Then something unexpected happened. The massive shark began to turn, as if she had decided the two divers were not worth her attention. But as she turned, her enormous body created powerful water currents that pushed Sarah and Marcus in different directions. Sarah felt herself being swept toward the canyon wall, her buoyancy controls struggling against the force of the water displacement. She managed to stabilize herself, but when she looked around for Marcus, her heart nearly stopped. The current had pushed Marcus directly toward the massive shark, and now he was floating less than 10 feet from the giant predator's head. The shark had noticed the movement and was turning back toward the young diver, her massive jaws beginning to open. Sarah realized she had perhaps seconds to act before witnessing a tragedy that would haunt her forever. Every instinct told her to swim away, to save herself from what could easily become a double fatality. But her training, her experience, and her sense of responsibility to her student overrode her survival instincts. She began swimming directly toward the massive shark, hoping to distract the predator from Marcus. It was an incredibly dangerous move, but she couldn't abandon her diving partner to face this threat alone. As Sarah approached, the giant shark's attention shifted between the two divers.